We're going to take the next few minutes to see how to quickly change the size and the edge hardness of the brush, as well as a few additional attributes. I'm going to start by creating a new document just at the default Photoshop size, and I'll double click that to open it. Now I'll tap the B key to select the brush tool, and then I'll right click, or on Mac, you can control click on the brush to just reset the tool. Now that we're all at the same starting place, I can use the next icon here in order to access the preset picker. Here I can change the size of the brush as well as the hardness of the brush. I can also change the shape of the brush as well as the angle. If you were looking for a specific brush, you can search for that brush. You can select the recently used brushes, and you can scroll down through a number of brush presets. All right, I'll tap enter to dismiss that dialog. And next to it, if I click that icon, it's going to show me both my brush settings, where I have a number of additional options, plus my brush presets. We're going to be discussing these panels more in the next video. So for now, I'll go ahead and close them. Now, to change your brush size, you can use the right bracket key to get a larger brush, and you can either tap it multiple times or you can hold it down to move a little bit quicker. You can use the left bracket in order to decrease the brush size. Or you can use the heads up display. So on Mac, you'd hold down the Control and Option key. On Windows, it's Alt and then right click. And then as you drag left or right, it will change the diameter. Or if you drag up or down, it will change the hardness of the brush. If you ever just see crosshairs in the image area instead of the brush size, it could be that you have the cap locks key enabled. So just disable that and you'll see the preview of the actual brush size. Now I'm going to right click, or again on Mac, that's a control click in the image area to access the brush preset picker. And I'm going to scroll up and choose the hard round brush and then tap enter to dismiss that window. I'll use the left bracket key to just get a little bit smaller of a brush, but you'll notice that as I paint in the image area, the paint fills that entire circle. And it does that because it's a hard brush. If I right click and then change the hardness down to 0, I want to show you that as I paint, the brush size changes because it feathers the edge inwards and outwards from that circle. All right, if you ever want to paint a straight line, you can hold down the Shift key as you paint. Or if you ever want Photoshop to connect the dots, you can click once and then hold down the Shift key and then click again, and Photoshop will draw a straight line between those 2 points. All right, at this point, I'm going to use the Edit menu and I'll choose Fill, and we're going to fill with white to just fill the canvas. If I want to change the opacity of the brush, I can do so using the options bar. We can either enter in a value, or I can use the drop down menu to access the slider, or we can use the scrubby sliders where you just click on the word and drag left or right. But when we have any of the painting tools selected, we can also use the numbers on our keyboard. So if I tap 5, it would set it to 50%, 8 would set it to 80%. If I type quickly like 54, it'll set me to 54%. Now with a lower opacity, when I paint once and then paint again on top of that, we can see the paint slowly building up. Eventually it'll get to 100%, but depending on the opacity that you're starting with, it might take a little while. All right, let's set the opacity back up to 100% and take a look at flow. So with the flow set at 100%, the paint comes out of the can rather quickly, right? So if I imagine that this is a can of spray paint and I paint in my image, it's like I'm really pressing down on the top of the spray paint. If I change the flow way down to somewhere around 10% and now I paint, I still have 100% opacity, but it's coming out of the can more slowly. All right, let's set that back up to 100% and take a look at smoothing. So sometimes, and I'm going to get a smaller brush here, it's difficult for me to make a nice smooth stroke as I'm painting. So if I increase the smoothing, let's say to like 80%, and now I paint, you can see that I can get a much smoother paint stroke. All right, let's set that back down to its default of 10%. Another way that brush strokes can interact with one another is by using the different blend modes that are listed up in the options bar. Now, blend modes are going to be covered in more detail later in the course, but let's take a look at what happens when we use either the multiply or screen blend mode. I'll get a little bit larger of a brush and I'll just start painting here, and then I'll change the blend mode to multiply. Now, every time I paint over that center area, you can see that it's being multiplied and getting darker and darker. So it's a little bit like opacity in that it's building up the paint, but because I'm multiplying each paint stroke together, it's going to go far beyond the foreground color, making it darker and darker. If I were to switch from multiply to screen, now every time I paint, it's going to get lighter. It's almost like we're painting with bleach. All right, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Command Delete on Mac or Control Backspace on Windows in order to fill with my background color. So I want to take just one moment to talk a little bit about a pressure sensitive tablet because I feel it's a really great investment if you're going to be doing a lot of painting or masking in Photoshop. Because without pressure sensitivity, changes to opacity and brush size, they're going to have to be done on a per stroke basis. So I'm going to select a few of these presets and just paint with them. We'll start with a soft round brush, and then I'm going to make sure that I've changed the blend mode back to normal, and I'm just going to paint with the mouse a straight line. Now, if I switch to the soft round pressure size and I paint again, well, it looks the same. And if I go to soft round pressure opacity, that's going to look the same as well. But now I'm going to switch over to my pressure sensitive tablet. I'll go ahead and select that soft round brush again. And sure enough, as I start painting, it really doesn't look any different than if I were painting with the mouse. But when I change to the soft round pressure size, now the pressure sensitive tablet and the pen are going to allow me to press lightly to get a smaller brush and then press harder in order to change the brush size dynamically as I paint. And if I go to the soft round pressure opacity, now as I paint lightly with the pen on the pressure sensitive tablet, I get a lower opacity, but as I press harder, I'll get a higher opacity. All right, let's go ahead and close that. And there we go, a quick overview of changing brush size, brush hardness, and other attributes of the brushes in Photoshop.